But if you or your descendants abandon me and disobey the decrees and commands I have given you, and if you serve and worship other gods, then I will uproot the people from this land that I have given them. I will reject this temple that I have made holy to honor my name. I will make it an object of mockery and ridicule among the nations. And though this temple is impressive now, all who pass by will be appalled. They will ask, why did the Lord do such terrible things to this land and to this temple? And the answer will be, because his people abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who brought them out of Egypt, and they worshipped other gods instead and bowed down to them. That is why he has brought all these disasters on them. And I can't help but wonder if all this stuff that was mentioned down here about the temple, being destroyed and it serving as an example to others, that might be where the exiles are right now. That might have tipped them off to, oh, that's what went wrong, because this is what the temple is like now. Absolute rubble. It's been destroyed. What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. So, we are looking at 2 Chronicles chapter 7. 2 Chronicles, 1st and 2 Chronicles being written to the Israelite exiles, just to kind of catch them up on, okay, how did we get in this situation? We know we're not in the land God promised us, but why exactly did God let us get captured? Why did the land get taken over by other kings? And why are we exiled? And is there anything we could do to make things better? So he's kind of recapping a bunch of things. Really kind of recapping the whole history of God's people. But a lot of focus on the kings and what happened after that. So right now, we're at the point of Solomon being king. The temple's been built. They put the Ark of the Covenant in there. And then there was this big cloud that sort of represented God's presence that entered the temple. And that's pretty much where we're at right now. So, let's hop in here. 2 Chronicles chapter 7. When Solomon finished praying, fire flashed down from heaven and burned up the burnt offerings and sacrifices, and the glorious presence of the Lord filled the temple. The priests could not enter the temple of the Lord because the glorious presence of the Lord filled it. When all the people of Israel saw the fire coming down and the glorious presence of the Lord filling the temple, they fell face down on the ground and worshipped and praised the Lord, saying, He is good. His faithful love endures forever. Alright, so, yeah, that kind of actually gets us to the most recent events as described in the past couple of chapters. They built the temple and put the Ark of the Covenant in there. Solomon, kind of did a public blessing sort of thing in a way. Also, kind of in that same moment, made a prayer to God that whatever the circumstances are, if people, especially God's people, pray earnestly, even just towards the temple, that God would hear their prayers and answer them and help them out with whatever they're praying for, as long as it's, of course, within God's will. But, yeah, so, again, this cloud that came upon the temple pretty much told them, all right, God's presence is here. So yeah, not too much else to say about that because that's been covered in the past couple of chapters. So, on to verse 4. Then the king and all the people offered sacrifices to the Lord. King Solomon offered a sacrifice of 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep and goats. And so the king and all the people dedicated the temple of God. The priests took their assigned positions, and so did the Levites who were singing, His faithful love endures forever. They accompanied the singing with music from the instruments King David had made for praising the Lord. Across from the Levites, the priests blew the trumpets while all Israel stood. Solomon then consecrated the central area of the courtyard in front of the Lord's temple. He offered burnt offerings and the fat of peace offerings there, because the bronze altar he had built could not hold all the burnt offerings, grain offerings, and sacrificial fat. For the next 7 days, Solomon and all Israel celebrated the Festival of Shelters. A large congregation had gathered from as far away as Lebo-Hamath in the north and the Brook of Egypt in the south. On the 8th day, they had a closing ceremony, for they had celebrated the dedication of the altar for 7 days and the Festival of Shelters for 7 days. Then at the end of the celebration, Solomon sent the people home. They were all joyful and glad because the Lord had been so good to David and to Solomon and to his people Israel. So, on top of the prayers and blessings and whatnot that were done previously, now there's all these offerings being made to the Lord to dedicate the temple, and hopefully to dedicate the people to God in amongst all this. And there's singing and music accompanying the singing, and so they're basically praising God in that way too, not just like, physically giving things, but also like singing and praising. Sort of like, I guess in a way, sort of like you'd have at a modern day church service. But then it says, I guess after that, then they celebrated the Festival of Shelters, which was kind of their biggest festival around, especially around whatever time of year this was. I want to say that it was in the spring-ish. That's the last kind of time frame that I remember being mentioned. Then at the end of the celebration, Hebrews says, then on the 23rd day of the 7th month. Okay, this day the ancient Hebrew lunar calendar occurred in October or early November. So, scratch what I said before. This is more in the fall. But for like 2 weeks straight, basically, they're celebrating. At least half of that was because of the temple and the altar and all that being dedicated and that whole ceremony. And then there's the Festival of Shelters. But yeah, so, joy, celebration, the temple is complete and dedicated, and they're all praising God for his faithfulness. Because, God had promised these things would happen, that, the temple would be built by one of David's sons, and, a whole bunch of stuff before that, but most recently, that kind of thing, and it happened, and there you go. God is good. Alright, on to verse 11. So Solomon finished the temple of the Lord, as well as the royal palace. He completed everything he had planned to do in the construction of the temple and the palace. Then one night the Lord appeared to Solomon and said, I have heard your prayer and have chosen this temple as the place for making sacrifices. At times I might shut up the heavens so that no rain falls, or command grasshoppers to devour your crops, or send plagues among you. Then if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sins and restore their land. My eyes will be open and my ears attentive to every prayer made in this place. For I have chosen this temple and set it apart to be holy, a place where my name will be honored forever. I will always watch over it, for it is dear to my heart. Alright. Pausing there for a bit, because I'm just kind of wanting to point out this stuff, all these different circumstances and God hearing the people's prayers in the midst of those circumstances, that's like all the stuff Solomon had prayed for, just like, I don't know, a chapter or two prior. But it was all really kind of the same. I guess maybe it was a precursor, you could say, to like the dedication ceremony and all that. But so God has basically said, yes, all right, this temple is now set as the place to worship my name. And, you know, any prayers said in this place, I will hear and act on. But it's never just as simple as like, okay, no matter what you do, I'm going to be with you, I will help you, and all of that. It's like, they still have to worship God sincerely. And it's probably going to get into some things like that in verse 17 here. As for you, if you faithfully follow me as David your father did, obeying all my commands, decrees, and regulations, then I will establish the throne of your dynasty. For I made this covenant with your father David when I said, one of your descendants will always rule over Israel. But if you or your descendants abandon me and disobey the decrees and commands I have given you, and if you serve and worship other gods, then I will uproot the people from this land that I have given them. I will reject this temple that I have made holy to honor my name. I will make it an object of mockery and ridicule among the nations. And though this temple is impressive now, all who pass by will be appalled. They will ask, why did the Lord do such terrible things to this land and to this temple? And the answer will be, because his people abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who brought them out of Egypt, and they worshipped other gods instead and bowed down to them. That is why he has brought all these disasters on them. So, this sounds pretty familiar to me. It might have been covered back in, like, 1 Kings or something like that. But, yeah, that part right there is the, okay, yes, I will do all this stuff, but you and the people are in a covenant relationship here. So this only holds up if you continue to, you know, obey my commands, worship the Lord your God as you rightfully should, and stay loyal in that way. And even kind of before he said all that, it's like God says, you know, the temple is set apart to be holy, a place where his name will be honored forever. If they're not honoring his name, then, you know, it's like they have defiled the temple and strayed away from its purpose. So then what good is it? It might as well end up getting destroyed and serve as an example to other people of, you know, how much that honoring the Lord really meant. Because, yeah, it might be big and very luxurious, or I should say it might have been from our current day perspective. It might have been very luxurious and, you know, clearly as close as they could get to a place worthy of, you know, God's favor. You know, a temple worthy of worshiping him, of being used to worship him, I guess. Anyway, but it being torn down due to them disobeying still means it serves as an example of how important worshiping the Lord is. So even if his name doesn't get honored by them in that place, in a way, it will still honor his name after it's destroyed, because other people will realize that it's in that state because the people turned away. But yeah, again, I'm pretty sure this was all covered to some extent in somewhere around 1 Kings, whenever it previously mentioned, Solomon becoming king and the temple being built and all that stuff. So I guess in part because of that, I don't really have a whole lot else in mind to say regarding this chapter. Although I guess I will add the whole thing about David's descendants ruling over Israel. Obviously, that kind of hinges on the people following God as well in this case, because if there's no... If things have gotten so bad in the land God promised that the temple dedicated to him is torn down, it's a pretty safe bet to say that, yeah, the people have gone away from God and they don't have their own kingdom anymore because they have fallen so far out of God's favor. So if there's no physical kingdom there's no, physical king to rule over that land, or even God's people. Symbolically, it still carries on afterwards, but not physically. And I can't help but wonder if all this stuff that was mentioned down here about the temple, being destroyed and it serving as an example to others, that might be where the exiles are right now. That might be, that might have tipped them off to, oh, that's what went wrong, because this is what the temple is like now. Absolute rubble. It's been destroyed. Okay, now that's all of my thoughts. So that'll do it for 2 Chronicles chapter 7. Okay, so the temple has been dedicated to God, obviously. And then God answers Solomon's prayer saying, yes, in the future, whatever happens, if people pray earnestly to the temple, aka, to God where he is known to be, then, God says he will heed those prayers and answer them and all that. And yeah, I think we're officially done with the temple stuff. At least, in 2 Chronicles here. I don't know if it really comes up again. I think future temple mentions in the Bible are more so about the rebuilt temple later on. But let me not get ahead of myself. So as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell to get updates when I post new videos. Look down in the description for links to social media pages, my supporter page, a Discord server, all sorts of good stuff down there. And of course, down below that, feel free to leave your thoughts and questions in the comment section with whatever you got for me. So that's going to do it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video. But whatever the case is, till next time, stay cool, people.